Story 1. The heartbreaking truth. My wife cheated, got pregnant, and I'm not the father. 20 years ago, on the first day of secondary school I, then M12, met Katie, then F11, and from that point on I was smitten, absolutely head over heels in love. For the next 3 months I would do anything to try and be close to her. Katie took the register after class, I'd accompany her. Katie needed a pen, I'd have a spare, I'd even give her my only one on some occasions, just so I could interact with her. Then, on December 15, 2004 at our school's Christmas disco I thought I'd hit the jackpot. When another girl from our class approached me with a note that read "Katie likes you." In the years that followed we became inseparable. And what people once referred to as a school romance had become love in its purest form. After finishing our A-levels we decided to get married, and although our parents were concerned they accepted our decision and supported us all the way, and why wouldn't they? We were meant to be. We ended up going to university as a married couple, which was the cause of many questions during Freshers Week, and even managed to get a shared room in our student accommodation. Things appeared perfect, we had the perfect balance of time together and time apart. She played hockey, I played rugby. We had mutual friends, we had our own friends. I honestly thought things were absolutely how they should be, but then Saturday the 4th of May 2013 happened. I'd woken up at 3 a.m. that morning to head into town to make the nearly 5-hour bus journey from Cardiff to Hull. Exams were finished. It was the last away day of the season and the Bluebirds had been promoted to the Premier League. Life was perfect, apart from that fucking red kit they were wearing at the time. After a 2-2 draw and the promotion party already being a month long at that point, I decided to skip the usual antics after getting back and decided to head home and spend some time with Katie. And in some ways I'm glad I did, in others I wish I didn't. Half cut, Chinese for two in hand, I opened the front door, kicked off my shoes and entered the living room, where I found some bloke hanging out the back of the love of my life. Well, shock, turned to anger, turned to me kicking the absolute fuck out of him. Katie pleaded for me to stop. Hearing her voice finally brought me back to reality. I let him go. Told her she had 30 seconds to get him out of my house, then went to the kitchen to grab another drink. She followed around 2 minutes later, eyes red with tears. Fuck me, she still had her wedding ring on. She pleaded for forgiveness, gave me the "it's only happened once" bollocks, before I told her to shut up and that she was going to answer every question I had. Me, who is he and how did you meet? Her, he's a third year, he plays men's hockey. Me, how many times? Don't you dare fucking lie to me, Katie. Her, only once, Sam, I promise. This was never meant to happen, things just got out of hand. Please, I love you. I broke down. I couldn't believe that Katie was capable of this, my Katie. I left the house to stay at my parents'. Constant texts and calls came my way, but I couldn't face her. I couldn't speak to her. The one person I thought I could trust implicitly had betrayed me in the worst way possible. 6 weeks eventually passed. I hadn't spoken a word to her. I'd barely left my room. On the 8th I can remember my dad coming into my room, putting his hand on my shoulder and saying she's downstairs. He squeezed and said, "Sam, I love you, but there's times in life where we can't avoid our problems anymore. Face these problems like you do on the rugby field, head down, arse up and run fucking straight, no regrets." Katie was in the living room, an absolute shell of the wife that I'd known and loved. She spoke before I'd even cleared the stairs. "Sam, I'm sorry, I love you, I'd do anything to save us." I looked at her. I could feel myself cracking and wanting to take her in my arms, letting her know that everything was going to be fine. But then she followed with something took me right back to that place of hurt. "I'm pregnant, 8 weeks along." That hit hard. She knew that I couldn't wait to be a dad one day. Ideally not going into my last year of uni, but still. I looked at her stone-faced and said, "I'll move home, we'll do a prenatal paternity test at 10 weeks, but know that I won't be raising another man's child." I moved back into our house. She did everything right. Sex when I wanted it, made my favorite meals and kept the fridge full of Red Stripe. After 2 weeks we did the test. A week after that the results came back. I wasn't the father. Something snapped. I didn't want to shout or cry. I just wanted her to hurt like I'd hurt. I wanted to get her back for the pain she'd caused. So I made a decision, one that over a decade on still sits uneasily in my gut. I put on an act, reassured her we can make it work and told her, "Katie, I love you, but I can't raise another man's child. Abort this baby and in a year's time when we graduate, we can add to our own little family and have a baby that's really half of us both." She cried, tried to push back and say that the baby doesn't have to know, that it can still be ours. But I told her, it's me or the baby. A week later she headed to the clinic to have the procedure. I stayed home under the guise of being unwell and not wanting to be in a medical facility. As she left I called some friends, who came with a van so we could load all of my possessions. 2 hours later, Katie came back to a house that was bare. I asked had she had the abortion. She sniffed and nodded, letting out a barely audible yes. I handed her divorce papers and walked out the door. Walking down the path to the van, I could hear her screams and cries. I looked down at my phone and blocked her number. That was the last time I'd ever seen or heard of Katie. Like I said at the end of my previous post, I never saw Katie again after handing her the divorce papers and walking away. I decided to move home and commute to university. The place just held too many memories of Katie and me. However, I would often crash at a friend's place after rugby on a Wednesday. It was on one of these Wednesdays at an all-sport social event where I would eventually run into the guy who I caught Katie with a few months prior. Turns out that the beating I'd given him caused a concussion, resulting in him missing some final exams and also failing his dissertation, which meant resitting his third year. A few of the hockey girls clocked my presence and came to console me, having heard about everything that had happened. No doubt they wanted some gossip to keep them ticking over for the next few months. They also let me know that Katie had dropped out of uni altogether. After a bit of small talk, Sarah, then F21, said, "Do you know who it was? You guys seem so happy. Katie never shut up about you." I looked at the guy and just said him. From there on, the night descended into absolute chaos. It just so happened to be that the guy Katie had slept with was Sarah's boyfriend of 2 years. I saw her face turn from concern to sadness to absolute rage in about 3 seconds. She then proceeded to kiss me with him in full view and dumping a cocktail jug over his head, before leading me back to her place to, as she put it, even the score. After doing the deed, she saw me out and came face to face with him at her door. He looked defeated. She then proceeded to kiss me on the cheek and said, "Thanks, Sam," before shutting the door in his face. The next few months after that were a bit of a blur. It was work Sunday to Tuesday. Wednesdays were for rugby and partying. Thursdays and Friday work, then go to the football on Saturdays. It was at the football shortly after graduating where I met the most amazing little guy named Ollie, then M4, and his uncle Owen, then M25, who were sat in the seats in front of me on match days. It started off with the little man copying the absolute dross I'd shout during the game, to him asking me little questions and starting conversations, to eventually me and my dad, then M55, meeting them beforehand to head into the ground together and them even coming to the away trip. Honestly, the best part of my week was seeing that little man at the football, and Owen still to this day is one of my closest friends. Saturday, January 10th, 2015 was the day everything truly started to get better. I was hugely excited to see little Ollie because Cardiff City were out of that stinking red kit and back in blue. We got to the pub before the game expecting to see Owen and Ollie, but they never came, so we decided to head to the ground. We walk up the stairs out of the concourse and I hear a familiar voice shout, "Sam!" I walked up the stairs to see Ollie sat next to a woman, with her head stuck in her bag. "This is my mom," he said cheerfully. The woman looked up. Fuck me sideways. I can honestly say my heart skipped a beat. I think I loved her as soon as I laid eyes on her. My dad gave me that ever so familiar pinch on the shoulder to bring me back into reality. "Hi, I'm Sam. No Owen today?" She then replied. "Hello Sam, I'm Lori. Owen's not well today. I'm not really one for football, but Oles couldn't bear not seeing his best mates Sam and Mike. Mike is my dad's name." I spent the game having my usual banter and fun with little Ollie, but glances kept being exchanged between Lori and me. After the game, my dad spoke for what seemed the first time that day. "Ollie, why don't you come with me to get a little something to eat and to meet Jane, Sam's ma'am? She's been absolutely desperate to meet you." He then turned to Lori and me. "Sam, you've been working hard this week, and from what I can gather, Lori could do with a bit of adult conversation. Head into town for an hour, then come and meet us back here." It was the quickest hour of my life. I shared my story with Lori and she shared hers with me. She was a single mom, got pregnant at 19 and had Ollie at 20 and was now 24. Ollie's dad disappeared shortly after he was born, not ready to be a father. She'd managed to juggle being a mom with uni and was now in her second year as a primary school teacher. Ollie's uncle Owen was actually her cousin, however they are best friends and have been inseparable since they were kids. The conversation flowed. After that hour I felt like I'd known her for years. That was 9 years ago. We've been married for 7. 2 years after our first meeting, I, M25, married Lori, F27, and my best friend became my son. It wasn't always plain sailing. I had issues opening up and trusting, but Lori was incredible. She was supportive, allowed me to settle into our relationship slowly. But after a year I knew she was my person. On the day of our wedding, as her father, Mark then M60, walked her down the aisle, she was followed by Ollie, M6. He handed me a letter which when opened contained adoption papers. He then proceeded to ask me, "Will you be my daddy, Sam?" I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried hard and squeezed him tight, We said our vows with Ollie stood next to me holding onto my leg. I told him a few years later that even though I technically became his dad the day of the wedding, in my eyes he became my son as soon as I fell in love with his mother. A year after the wedding we welcomed our second son Aaron, and 4 years later we welcomed our twin girls Lily and Poppy. 10 years ago I was 22 years old, was already divorced and had completely given up on love. I met and bonded with a 4-year-old kid who'd then lead me to the absolute love of my life. Lori and Ollie literally took a heart that had shattered into a million pieces and piece by piece, shard by shard, put it back together. It's been cathartic reflecting on my story, and if I could give my younger self any advice, I'd just let him know that all the heartbreak he had to endure will lead him towards the most joyful and fulfilling life he could imagine. Now we're up to date. I'm writing this as I'm about to take my family to Owen's place. He's been seeing someone for a while that he's finally ready to introduce to us. Hi Reddit, I thought I was done after sharing my story a couple of weeks back, but it's funny how life can sometimes come around and bite you in the arse. Things are a bit chaotic in my life at the moment and well, this seemed like the perfect place to come and vent. Around 3 weeks ago, I, Sam, M32, and my wife Lori, F34, along with our 4 kids Ollie, M14, Aaron, M6, Poppy and Lily, F2, were heading out to meet Owen, M35, and his daughter Gwen, F3, to be introduced to his new partner, Catherine, F31. Things have been tough for Owen over the last couple of years with Gwen's mother unfortunately passing shortly after she was born. So needless to say that we were absolutely over the moon for him and couldn't wait to finally meet the first real relationship he's had since Lou passed. We arrived at Owen's and had the usual greetings and Owen let us know that Catherine would be joining us shortly but had to tie up some loose ends at the hospital, where she was working as a pediatrician. So with the sun shining, we decided to head into the garden to fire up the barbecue and make the most of the weather. Gwen and the twins splashed in the paddling pool while Lori watched and Owen the boys and I kept an eye on the grill and threw a rugby ball around. I remember having Ollie and Aaron on each shoulder about to dump them into the pool when I heard a familiar quiver, Sam. I put the boys down and turned to acknowledge said quiver, instead I froze. It was Katie. I turned to Lori who could see the concern on my face. I barely managed to mumble a reply, Katie. As I said the name, Lori grabbed tightly onto my arm, so hard that I could feel her nails digging deeply into my bicep. Owen, not sensing the tension, bundled over with a beer in one hand, wrapped his arms around her shoulders, kissed her on the cheek and said, Sam, this is Catherine. He suddenly cottoned on that things were tense and unwrapped his arms from around her. Is everything okay? He asked, concerned. Looking at the guy who had become my best friend, a fantastic uncle to my kids, a constant support to both Lori and me, as well as being a single father who'd been to hell and back over the past 3 years, I knew he deserved happiness. I smiled at them both and replied, Hi Catherine, I'm Sam and this is my wife Lori, Owen's cousin. Lori, clearly shocked by my reply, excused us and took me into the house to put the twins down for their nap. When they finally fell asleep, she looked up at me. Her, is that? Me. Yes. Her, did you know? Me? Of course I didn't. I don't think anyone could have been as shocked as I was. I feel like I've seen a ghost. Her, why didn't you say anything? Me, you saw how happy he looked. I couldn't bear to ruin that. He's been through so much. He's been there for us from the start. I'll tell him eventually, but not today. We went back to the garden, put on a face and tried to act as if everything was okay. Owen introduced Katie to our kids and you could see that Owen's daughter Gwen absolutely loved her, essentially attached to her hip. The next few hours things got easier. I'm not sure if the beer just helped me believe my own bull that everything was fine, but that feeling of almost normalcy came crashing down, hard. I went for what must have been my 9th piss of the night. You know what happens when you break the seal. And when I left the bathroom I could hear something coming from the spare room. Thinking it might have been Gwen or the twins, I peeped my head in to see Katie sat on the bed, eyes soaked and sobbing. I decided to sit next to her, placed my hand on her knee and asked what the matter was. She looked at me, crying and said, I never thought I'd see you again. I never in a million years thought about what I'd say or do if I saw you again. This hurts, knowing that you've built a life with someone else, had children, started a family. It hurts, Sam. It took me years to get over you, and when I finally started to, you pop up out of nowhere. I followed. Didn't Owen ever mention us? Didn't he mention me? He knows what happened to me all those years ago. He knows about you. From here my first conversation with Katie for over a decade begun. Owen always spoke about his cousin Lori and his best friend Sam, but we grew up in the valleys, not around here, so I never expected Sam to be you. Me. But surely a 31-year-old Katie from Bridgen would ring alarm bells for him. And why does he call you Catherine? The only person I've known to call you that was your mum. When you left, I needed a fresh start. I took a year off uni and went back after you'd graduated. I stopped referring to myself as Katie and started going by Catherine. As soon as I'd finished my undergrad, I came here to start my medical studies at Cardiff Uni. Why did you leave like that, Sam? Me? You cheated Katie. Her. I made a huge mistake that I've regretted ever since, but what you did was cruel. Me? I was cruel? You cheated, got pregnant and tried to convince me that I could raise another man's child. What did you expect? For me to sweep it all under the rug? Forget it ever happened. But honestly, thank you. If you didn't do what you did, we'd still be together now. I wouldn't have met Ollie or Lori, I wouldn't have this wonderful family. I'd have chosen to love you forever, when in reality the real love of my life was half an hour up the road, raising the little boy who'd eventually become my oldest son. Her. But you promised that if I had an abortion we'd start a family together and leave everything behind us. I nearly aborted my little girl for you, Sam. Me? Nearly. Her. Yes, nearly. The doctors told me that if I aborted this baby that there would be a very strong chance that I'd never get pregnant again. So I decided to keep her, in the hope that one day you'd come around, you'd warm to her. But you handed me those divorce papers and I knew that it was over. I knew you'd given up. Me? Given up? I was forced into fucking submission, Katie. And you'd have happily let me play happy family with another man's child? Her. Aren't you doing that now? Me? Don't you fucking dare. Ollie is my son. Maybe not biologically, but not because his mother cheated on me. I bonded with him months before meeting Lori, and chose to love him as a son the minute I fell in love with his mother. Her. Doesn't my daughter deserve the love of a father, Sam? Me? Of course she does, Katie, but you and I both know that her father wasn't me. Would you be happy knowing that us staying together would have been more damaging to her? Why didn't you look for the guy I caught raw dogging you in our marital home? Her. Jesus Christ, you've always had a way with words, Sam. Knowing that the baby growing inside of me wasn't half you, hurt more than anything I'd felt in my life, up until you left. I found him after Daisy was born, convinced he could at least be a part of her life, but he refused without a paternity test. I was certain it was him, but 3 tests came back negative, he wasn't her dad. Me. So it was more than once then. You know I actually believed you that it was only that one time, Jesus, Katie. Her. I was telling you the truth, Sam, it was only that one time. Me. So what are you trying to say? I'm not the dad, he's not the dad, who is? Her. Haven't you cottoned on yet? For an intelligent guy you're awfully slow, Sam. There was a mistake on the results of the prenatal test. Me. Silence. Her. She's yours, Sam. She always was. As those words left her mouth, she stood up to open the door. Lori and Owen stood together on the other side, a look of shock etched on both of their faces. How much did you hear? I asked. Enough, Lori replied. Owen hasn't heard from Katie since and I've been a mess. Knowing that there's a 10-year-old girl half an hour away that could be mine, and I haven't been there. 10 fucking years I've missed if she's mine, I need to know. Lori has been my rock through all of this, but I can see it starting to take its toll on her as well. I just don't know where to go from here, I'll update if anything happens. Wow, hi Reddit. I'm sorry it's been so long since my last post. But life kind of got in the way, I can't believe it's been 2 years. First things first, I want to answer some of the more reoccurring questions I've noticed since my last post. Bear with me, it's been a while. Did Lori know about my abortion ultimatum to Katie? Yes, I told her around 6 months into the relationship. She was disgusted and didn't speak to me for a month. Eventually she realized how much we loved each other and was willing to reconcile. How did Katie and Owen meet? Katie is a pediatrician at a local hospital and Owen is a teacher for children with severe disabilities. They met once a fortnight to discuss her patients that happened to be in Owen's class. Why didn't Katie reach out to you or your family about the baby? This question will be addressed in my update. What do you do for work and what did you study? I studied human nutrition and dietetics and I work as a dietitian at a local clinic. I also consult for a couple of sports nutrition and supplement companies on the side, looking at the ingredients that they put on their products, etc. Does Ollie call you Sam or Dad? From the day of the wedding to him being around 10 I was Daddy Sam, since then it's been just Dad. My parents have been Nanny and Bamp since the wedding. How did Owen's wife die? Owen was never married, however he had been with Gwen's mum for around 5 years. She was unfortunately hit by a drunk driver while taking Gwen out for a walk, it was 9 a.m. Gwen by some miracle was uninjured, but Lou unfortunately passed after 3 days of fighting. Lou was 28 years old. So on with the update, strap the fuck in. 2 days after my last post, Owen came over for a chat. He let me know that he had no clue that Catherine was Katie, and that he'd spoken to her that morning and decided to end their relationship. I told him not to on my account and that I could look past our history for the sake of his happiness. He informed me that although mine and Katie's history was a factor, he couldn't shake the fact that she couldn't reach out to him after everything, that they'd been together for 4 months and he still hadn't met her daughter. None of it sat right with him and he couldn't continue with a relationship that was so one-sided on his end. He did, however, give me Katie's contact, and encouraged me to call her to see if her daughter was actually our daughter. I called Katie after my chat with Owen. She ignored my call and simply texted me the details of 3 private labs where I was to send samples off for a paternity test. 10 days later she called, told me that the results were in and that I could meet her at a coffee shop near her work to look at the results together. I called Lori and arranged for her to take me. When we arrived, I made sure that she parked in full view of our meeting, but far enough away for her not to be seen. I went in and ordered us each something to drink, then sat where I knew Lori could see us. 2 minutes later Katie walked in, clutching 3 brown envelopes. She sat opposite me, placed her hand on her mug, took a sip and said, "Hazelnut latte with oat milk, you remembered." I replied, "I assumed you were still lactose intolerant and this is probably too intense of a moment for you to get wind." She went red. There's that way with words again. I looked at her. She could probably see the anxiety in my eyes. She placed the envelopes in front of me and gestured for me to open them. Envelope 1. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Envelope 2. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Envelope 3. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Fuck. I looked up at Katie. Her eyes were red, cheeks soaked with tears. "She was yours all along, Sam. She really is half of us both. It's not too late for us, you know. We could start fresh, we can be a family." I took my gaze away from the results and stared up at her. "You're not my person, Katie. Lori is. I'll be there for our daughter. I'll be the best father I can be to her, but your daughter's father is all I'll be to you." Katie stood from the table and handed me a note. "Come to this address tomorrow afternoon to meet her. I'll be home at 3 and don't bring your wife this time." She turned and waved to the spot where Lori was parked and left. I returned to the car and showed Lori the results. She placed her hand on the back of my head and pulled me in to kiss my forehead. She then looked deep into my eyes and spoke, "We'll make this work, Sam. Your daughter won't be treated any differently to our other 4 kids. If she's part of you, I know that I'll love her too." The next day I was a bag of nerves, my stomach doing somersaults and my heart missing every other beat. I'd driven to the address Katie had given me by 12 and found a space around the corner to sit and gather my thoughts for a couple of hours. 3 p.m. came quickly and I remember knocking the door of Katie's house shaking like a shitting dog. Katie opened the door and smiled at me warmly. For half a second I remembered how I fell in love with her all those years ago. "She's in there. Can I get you anything to drink?" Katie said softly. "Water please," I replied. Katie waved me towards the door. I gently knocked and opened it slowly and quietly called out her name, "Daisy?" But as my foot entered the door I felt a thud at the back of my head. Blackness. I woke up to the feeling of freezing cold water being splashed in my face. I looked up to see Katie with an empty glass in one hand and a cricket bat in the other. In the corner of the room there was a clock. It was 4 a.m. I tried to move but suddenly realized that my arms had been cuffed to the bedpost behind me. I looked up at Katie again. There was venom in her eyes, a face that expressed pure unbridled hatred. "What the fuck, Katie? What's going on? Where's Daisy?" She stared back at me, her lips half curled into a grin. She started to speak. "There is no Daisy. We don't have a child, Sam, but I needed to get you here. Now if you want answers, you're going to keep your mouth fucking shut and listen to what I have to say. 11 years ago, you promised me that if I aborted my child we'd give things another go and start our own family. I did abort the baby, Sam, but you lied. In the months after I floated along with no purpose, ultimately accepting that I'd made my bed so needed to try and move on. I really did go back to uni after you graduated, went on to medical school and became a doctor. But you were always in the back of my mind. I always hoped fate would bring you back to me. 6 years ago I met Chris, a colleague of mine. We fell in love and 4 years ago we decided to start trying for a baby. After 2 years of trying and having gone through countless fertility tests, it was ultimately discovered that the abortion I had all those years ago had left me infertile, the abortion you made me have. No later than the second we were out of the clinic door, Chris left me, saying that he couldn't be with a woman that couldn't give him a child. The next day I went for a walk in Routh Park to clear my mind. I saw you there, Sam, arm in arm with your heavily pregnant wife and followed by your 2 sons. You were looking at her the way you used to look at me. I saw you bend forward to kiss her belly and something broke inside of me. You fucking robbed me of that opportunity, you fucking pig. Fast forward a year and I get a follow request on social media from Owen. One of the teachers I worked with closely, and who do I see in half of his pictures? You. I know from then that I could get back at you, Sam. The right signals were there from him. He's not a bad-looking guy and I knew he liked me, so I used that to my advantage. The night of the barbecue I managed to get a sample from 3 of the kids for a paternity test, but after sending them off I realized that one of the samples I'd sent off was Gwen. Does Owen know you're her father, Sam? I looked up at her, managed a quick laugh, then spat in her direction. I was their sperm donor, you silly cunt. The door burst open, armed police followed by Owen and Lori. Before they managed to get to her, Katie swung the bat. Blackness. I woke up exactly 17 days later. The first sound I heard was the cry of relief from Lori. After 2 more days I was able to talk again. Lori and Owen filled me in on what had happened in the time since. Katie confessed to everything. She was deemed unfit to stand trial and had been placed in Broadmoor Hospital. She's been there ever since. I remained in hospital for another 6 weeks. I've since regained full cognitive function and most of my physical function. A miracle apparently. Owen actually started dating my physiotherapist. Physical therapist to you Americans. Amy, F38. They're engaged and expecting a little boy in a month's time. Yes, I donated again. My life is essentially back to normal. I realized that life was too short and am in the process of taking my consulting business full-time to spend more time with my family. Lori and the kids are doing well. She's been my constant support, but I can tell she still worries. I'm taking her on a surprise holiday to Cyprus soon. Ollie has been doing great. He's just finished his exams and is still pestering me at the football. Aaron is Ollie 2.0 and absolutely idolizes his brother. He also pesters me at the football. The twins have just started school and are doing amazingly. They unfortunately follow their mother on the football front. Absolutely detest it. It was while reflecting and writing this update when I realized just how badly I'd hurt Katie. Her cheating was disgusting, but my actions were downright deplorable. I've since written to her, apologizing for my actions, and although there's nothing that either of us can do to undo the past, the guilt I feel is something that will live inside of for the rest of my life. My final words of advice from this post would be to think about the future consequences of our actions. Just think. The consequences of my actions towards Katie have been far longer lasting than the hurt she caused me. Story 2. My boyfriend of 3 years cheated on me with my best friend on our holiday trip and I don't know what to do. I am Kate AF22 and my boyfriend, which I will call James, is a M24 and we have been together since 2021. We live in an apartment together and live very close to my best friend, whom I'll call Amy. James convinced me not to go to the college I wanted to learn at because he didn't want to move away from family, but I loved him so I understood. Amy was also telling me to stay because she didn't want to lose me and that she would be so lonely without me, and that broke my heart because we have been friends since 2nd grade. But anyway, me, James, Amy, and the other people in our friend group, which I'll call Mark, Evan, and Lisa, all went on a trip together to celebrate Christmas, so we got an Airbnb to stay at for our week-long trip. We were talking about who should share rooms and there were like 3 rooms, so Mark and Lisa said they were gonna share because they were together, and then Amy said she and James could share because she wakes up early and so does he, so I can get some nice sleep, and I literally gasped because what, like, James is my boyfriend, why does she think she can sleep in the same bed as him? I don't know if it makes me seem insecure, but it rubbed me the wrong way. James said it wasn't a bad idea because he wanted to wake up early to go on walks and that he hated waking me up. I was just shocked that my boyfriend didn't want to sleep with me just because he woke up early, and when we were just at home I woke up early with him. I found it weird but said, no, James is my boyfriend, so me and him will be sharing a room. Thanks for trying to be thoughtful though. Lisa giggled because she later told me that she found it weird that Amy would even try to share a room with James, and both Evan and Mark just found it really odd. When we did go to the coast though, they started acting even more suspicious, and Amy wore this really revealing dress to dinner and asked James how it looked, and he said that it was really pretty. I took my boyfriend aside and started saying things like, why are you acting so weird and why are you letting her flirt? He just said I was being silly and overthinking it and that they were just being funny. But other things they did that made me think they were doing sneaky shit was that she would also be super close to him and tried to hold his hand when we walked, and she was asking him for help putting on a top, and it made me so uncomfortable. One day we were all supposed to be going to a bar, but Amy and James said they were just going to stay because they both felt sick, which just made me feel like something was going to happen while I was gone. But me and Evan, Mark and Lisa had a good time, but I went to the Airbnb early because I had a bad rash and it hurt like hell. But when I walked to the door it was locked, but I just went to the back door since I thought we probably just locked the front door when we were leaving. But I went in and I heard my boyfriend and Amy upstairs and I knew they were doing each other, so I just waited outside the door and listened because I was too scared to walk in. Eventually, they finished and got in the shower together, but they didn't leave the room because there was a bathroom connected to the room me and my boyfriend were sharing. I was so upset and I went outside and just cried, but I went to some burger place and waited until all of my friends went back. I returned to the Airbnb and my boyfriend tried kissing me and saying that he missed me, but I just had this hurting feeling in my chest and couldn't look him or Amy in the eye for the rest of the trip. We just went back home last week and I've been distant to him. He has been asking me why I'm acting so weird, but I have been too afraid to tell him or anyone else that I knew what happened. I have been thinking of things to do and I know that he has an iPad and the iPad connects to his messages, so I could check that soon, but I have just been so hurt and lost because he is such a good boyfriend to me, but I don't know if I love him anymore after that, and I hate my best friend for doing that to me, and I'm so upset that I have given so many things up just for them and sacrificed so many things for them, and I would really appreciate some help on what I should do. I'm sorry if this was really long, I just needed to tell someone. Update: James woke me up early as usual, so once he left I looked through the iPad and the messages. It genuinely made me feel sick. I have been screenshotting their messages. Last night, before I went to bed, I told my family everything so that after I break up with him, I'll have somewhere to go. My best friend and boyfriend have been sexting since late September. I will send the screenshots to everyone after I confront James and Amy because I don't want my friends to tell them that I know what happened before I do. James gets home in about 5 hours, so I will update you all later. Story 3, I, F25, discovered my BF, M28, of 3 years is cheating. Tonight is the biggest night of his life. Help me. I won't go into all the gory details of our relationship. We were in love and, well, I still love him, but I found out, clearly he does not. I discovered proof that he has been cheating on me for a while, in the form of small home movies of them. I don't know the girl, and from the looks of their conversations, yep, went ahead and post-discovery snooped, she has no idea I exist. Tonight is the biggest night of my BF's life. He's receiving a state award at a big dinner with a few hundred people attending. From his mom and dad to councilmen and all of that. In fact, the only reason I discovered this transgression is because I have been putting together a little video for him to enjoy of some of the key moments of his life. You know, typical sappy shit. I'm burdened with a lot of power right now, and I don't know if I have it in me to do the right thing. Or if I even know the right thing. I'm blinded with tears of rage and sadness and betrayal. But at the same time, I love him, have loved him, and do I really want to do this? The relationship is over, no doubt about it. I am not a woman who will take her man cheating on her, certainly not. That's not the issue. The issue is there are cutesy selfies of the two of them. A lot of them, only shared between the two of them. Nothing lewd, there's plenty of that on camera though. Do I sneak one in the snap reel as a way of letting him know that I know? Or do I simply confront him after his moment in the sun passes? I'm not going to pick up everything and leave without cutting contact. That's not my style and it wouldn't make me feel good, just very sad. Do I do the bitchy thing for once in my life? To anyone looking at the snap reel, it would just look like a picture of him and a friend. But to him and to me, it would be a private message, an outing. TLDR, found out BF was cheating on me and have the power to let him know via slipping a photo of the two of them into the snap reel showing tonight. Should I do it or gracefully exit his life? Original TLDR, found out BF was cheating on me and have the power to let him know via slipping a photo of the two of them into the snap reel showing tonight. Should I do it or gracefully exit his life? Well, it's been a month and a half since this all went down. I have gotten so many requests for an update and I never intended to actually give one, honestly, because I was afraid of the fallout depending on what I ended up doing. So what did I do? I did the immature, vengeful thing. And I don't regret it. I took a few photos of the two of them, tasteful photos that gave off no indication other than she might be a childhood friend. I slipped them into the snap reel. And I spoke kindly of him at the podium, then after my turn was finished, I walked out. I drove home feeling calm and in control. 20 minutes later, the text started. Where did I go? What did I know? Where did I find the photos? Was there more in store for him? I texted him, I know you've been fucking her. But there are no more photos. There weren't any, and of course I left it at that. He didn't come home that night. Or the next. The next day, he called me to ask me if we could meet and talk at a public location. I agreed to meet him at Starbucks. I arrived early, waited for him. He showed up a few minutes late and took the seat across from me. He started right off with the excuses, how it just happened, and he regrets it fully. She doesn't mean anything to him. And that she looked like a girl he had a crush on in high school and he was powerless against his teenage self. I didn't interrupt him, just let him have his time. When he was done and looking at me for a sign of what might happen next, all I could say was, "So where did you stay the past few nights?" "Her house." "And what did you do?" He wouldn't answer. There hadn't been any doubt in my mind. Really? I knew I was leaving him. He talked over himself, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, saying he'd change. I told him that I didn't want him to have to change himself. That if who he was naturally was someone who cheated on his girlfriend, then that's not someone I wanted to be with. He said that he was thinking of proposing to me, and all I could say after that was, "Good thing I found out before." Fast forward to a few weeks later. He's moved out, and I'm doing well. We have cut off contact. People ask me about him all the time, and I just let them know, he left me for a girl who looked like his high school crush. So that's the end. We are broken up. We are never, ever, ever getting back together. I don't feel any regret for how I handled it. Like one commenter said, there's no need to take the high road all the time. TLDR, I added the photos to the snap reel. He saw them. We broke up and are never getting back together. I don't regret my choice, only that I wasted 3 years with an overgrown child. Story 4, OOP walks in on her boyfriend cheating on her with his longtime friend I, F20, walked in on my boyfriend, M22, cheating on me with his longtime friend. I wish this were a joke. My heart physically hurts just typing this out. My boyfriend, who I'll call K, and I have been dating for 4 years. After high school he asked me to move in with him in a different state. I agreed so that we could be together while we attended college. Over the years we made amazing friends here, and he was just as kind to me as when we first started dating. Cute awkward text messages, surprise gifts and flowers at least once every 2 weeks. We had a date night every Thursday after work as well. We were both from well-off families, so we never struggled financially. He also told me he loved at least once a day. Well, last week I got out of work early. I was in a good mood because Kay had sent flowers to my workplace and ordered me Chinese for lunch, because I had mentioned that I had a taste for it the night before. On my way home from work I picked up some of his favorite donuts and went home. When I walked in the door, I could immediately hear the moaning. I walked to our bedroom to see that our friend Ellie was on top of him. My heart dropped. They'd known each other for 10 years, but they were never close, or so I thought. They didn't notice me until I dropped the donuts in shock. They quickly covered themselves up and Kay got up to try and explain the situation to me, but I wasn't hearing any of it. I packed a bag and left to my friend's house. I've been here for the last week trying to rationalize everything. He's been calling me and texting me, telling me he loves me and that he doesn't know why he did this. He's been asking me to come back. Where did I go wrong? Was I not satisfying him enough? I just don't understand why he would do this to me. I have no idea what to do moving forward. TLDR, I got off of work early and found my boyfriend of 4 years in bed with his friend of nearly 10 years. I don't understand why he would do this to me or what I did wrong. Update 1 posted on October 21st, 2022 in relationship_advice. Update, I, F20, walked in on my boyfriend, M22, cheating on me. First, I would really like to thank you all for all of your supportive comments and DMs. They really helped me to pull myself out of this hole a bit. For those wondering what excuse Kay gave me, he told me that it just happened. He said this really was the first time and it wasn't planned at all. That I should know this isn't the real him. He explained that she came over and that one thing just lead to another and it was a mistake he'd do anything to fix. He sent me pictures of an engagement ring as well. Ellie messaged me as well, saying how she never meant to hurt me and that it wasn't supposed to be this way. Kay is still bombarding me with messages apologizing and asking for forgiveness. After reading through all of your comments though, I decided to take your advice. This morning I called my friend Ian and explained the situation to him. I asked him if he'd be willing to come with me and help me to grab my things while Kay was at work tomorrow morning. I explained the situation to my friends and family and they all agree that leaving is the best option. I will be taking all of my things and flying back home. My parents have sent me the money for a ticket and I'll be moving back in with them for the time being. I don't plan on telling Kay anything. He will just come home to a partially empty apartment. Update 2 posted on October 23, 2022 on OOP's profile. Update 3I, F20, walked in on my boyfriend, M22, cheating on me. Thank you all again for your supportive messages and kind words. It really means a lot. As planned, my friend Ian and I went back to the apartment in the morning when I knew Kay wouldn't be there, to pack my things. It took about 3 hours in total to pack all of my things with Ian's help. We packed my things into our cars then went to have them shipped back to my parents' house. To be honest, I'm still completely heartbroken. All of you called me strong and I thank you, but I don't feel strong at all. I feel as if I just lost half of my heart. I really did think he was going to be the man I would marry. So it was very scary when I got on my phone to look at the security cameras and Kay was throwing things around and acting like I'd never seen before. He'd always been very level-headed. At least to my knowledge. He called me at least 100 times, but I'm not going to answer. I decided to take your advice and block both him and Ellie. I'll be on my flight back to my parents tomorrow morning. Update 3 posted on October 26, 2022 on Off My Chest. Update, I, F20, walked in on my boyfriend, M22, cheating on me with his longtime friend. As planned, my friend Ian and I went back to the apartment in the morning when I knew Kay wouldn't be there, to pack my things. We packed my things into our cars, then went to have them shipped back to my parents' house. I got on my phone to look at the security cameras and Kay was throwing things around and acting like I'd never seen before. He'd always been very level-headed. So that was scary to me. He called me at least 100 times, but I'm not going to answer. I decided to take your advice and block both him and Ellie. I'll be on my flight back to my parents tomorrow morning. Sorry it took so long for an update. A lot of crazy things happened after I got to my parents. As I was getting settled in, it turns out that a mutual friend of ours told Kay what I was doing and he thought it would be a good idea to come to me in person to beg for forgiveness. To be honest, I almost had a moment of weakness until it became apparent that he didn't come alone. He brought Ellie with him. He said it was because he figured with her also guaranteeing that it wouldn't happen again, I would believe him and go back to him. Ellie also decided this was the best time to admit that she was pregnant and that Kay might be the father. Kay said that even if he was the father, he would only be there for the baby. That his heart would only belong to me. I was furious and heart was broken all over again. This also made it very apparent it was indeed not the first time. Because Kay wouldn't leave, my younger brother, M18, also came out and started calling Kay and Ellie all sorts of things and it led to a physical altercation. My little brother punched him in the face and thankfully Kay took that as a sign to leave. This is all such a huge mess. I don't want to see Kay or Ellie anymore. I don't want to hear the excuses. My heart feels like it's been ripped apart. They can have each other for all I care. If I post more updates, they will likely be on my page for anyone interested. Really thank you all for all your kindness. Thank you for calling me strong even when I don't feel like it. Update 4 posted on November 4, 2022 on OOP's profile. Update, again I, EF20, walked in on my boyfriend, M22, cheating with a longtime friend I didn't drop out of college. Thankfully prior to this whole incident I was already taking online courses. I do plan to move back, but in my own apartment later on. Now as for what happened next between Kay and I. He came back twice to try and apologize and ask me to reconsider. He reminded me about how I said I had never felt this way for someone before and that ending this would be a mistake. That we could work through these problems, if I give him a chance. I told him that I don't plan on being a step-parent to his mistress's kid, so even if I dismissed the cheating, which I made clear that I wouldn't, I'd break up with him because of that. He began crying and saying he would talk her into getting an abortion if it meant that I would go back with him. I hate them both, but to be honest, hearing that made me feel disgusted. I told him that we were done and he needed to leave. The second time my dad threatened him if he didn't leave the property. From what I hear now, he went back home. Story 5. How bad is it, my GF? My GF, F24, of 3 months swiped up with emojis under this guy's stories. She went to HS with him, who was posing in his boxers. She wasn't trying to hide it, or at least it seemed, but I found it and confronted her about it. She lied at first saying she was referencing a dog that he was holding in the picture, but with more push she admitted she was hyping him up and found him attractive. I won't go into full detail, but she definitely minimized her act and tried to gaslight me, but I called her out on it. And this is all while she's maintaining a streak at that. To my knowledge she only sends like one snap a day to her streaks. I obviously was upset. BC, we had talked about our boundaries and this a simple big no. She, without asking, tells me that it is simply that, hyping him up, BC he from time to time, swipes on her story being nice and she wanted to return the favor. Insisting that she didn't want anything. She further explained that she never had a crush on him. Never talked to him like that or had anything physical with him. I view this back and forth as a form of flirting and I know for fact she would upset if I did something similar, BC she said herself. However, 2 weeks later, I'm still upset about the situation and I lost some trust in her. BC, I just feel like it's common sense to not do that. Unless I'm controlling or something. For that time, she kept reassuring me that she didn't have an end goal. I asked her why she felt like she owed him something and after countless back and forth says, BC he's attractive, she's more inclined to be nice. Yet she says that she want anything with him? Just today I learned that she in fact lied to me and left out some details. For those weeks she stayed with her story, that she didn't know him, just finds him attractive, which is okay, and that at the end it's nothing to be freaked out about essentially. Since high school she found him attractive and even had a crush on him. It's way back then, so I don't care, but I'm just confused as why she say didn't. And that she's been finding him attractive ever since. Even to the point where she used to tell her friends about how sexy he is and pretty much sexualize him to them. Early in the year before we started talking. So it hurts to find out there's more to it, and she made it seem like it was something recent that sprouted. And it sucks even more. When I first found out, I told her to tell me the truth and that there's no point to lie if she really is serious about this. Yet for 2 weeks she insisted with her story until yesterday I found out, like I mentioned. Her reply to me confronting about this part is that she wasn't trying to protect my feelings and that she didn't want to tell me this. It would look as there's more to it. So what do y'all? She insists to forgive her and that she won't lie to me. But during those 2 weeks when we argued about this, I asked her plenty of times to tell me the truth. Feeling insecure and in my head, would she have told me about this if I didn't see what she said about him? And then would I have known that she, in a sense, had a thing in her head for him? Again, I had to figure all these things out and confront her about it. What do y'all think? I ended up breaking things off with her. For more context, in those 2 weeks she did unadd him, blocked on whatever she had him on for those mentioned about this. The reason #1 why I broke things off is because it's simple. She broke my trust and a boundary. Even if her intentions were innocent. It hurts to know that she at first didn't view it as problem. Now with all the talks we've had, she's very much aware what she did was wrong. Which is great, but like I said, the details matters in all of this. She in general is very social and friendly. Why I liked her from the beginning, so am I. But her inability to differentiate flirty or being nice is what's problematic. It'd rather be hurt for a couple of months than to be uncertain for God knows how long. I genuinely like this girl, and other than this incident, we got along so well. So well. I know I'm young, 24, but I felt a future with her. Yet I can't get over the fact of the fashion she lied to me. That was the biggest deal breaker. I haven't mentioned all of it, but if I were to put in chronological order of how the events went down, I'm sure everyone would say to end things. Time to heal and move on. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and hit that subscribe button to follow Cheating Love Stories for more amazing videos. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.